One Punch Banta is the second episode of the first season of Taxi. This is, of course, directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. This is, however, only the second episode of Taxi that I've ever seen, so I'm still getting to know the characters. I'm still getting to know the comedy style, so my thoughts are not overly extensive. But at the same time, I do have some thoughts and some things that I really enjoyed. I didn't actually think I'd enjoy this going into it because I realised it was about boxing and I don't care. I do not care about boxing at all. However, I really liked it, and much to my surprise, my first laugh happened because of something Latka did. I mentioned in my previous discussion, I didn't care for the character, and I still don't. But I did get a laugh from him because at the beginning, Louie is complaining to him and he's about to look in the car. And I don't know the technical term for it, but Louie stands on this wrench thing. And I don't think it's a jack, is it? It doesn't look like a jack. I don't know anything about cars, which is going to be interesting watching a show about taxi drivers. But Louie stands on this thing, and obviously because Danny DeVito's short and he is 2 inches shorter than me, just for reference, I'm allowed to laugh at height-based jokes because I am the butt of them on a frequent occasion. Latka then cranks this thing up so that Louie can get a better look in the car, but of course Louie's not happy about this, and I thought it worked quite well. It was quite entertaining, and then we have another laugh at Louie's expense. It was a little bit awkward, and I wasn't sure where they were going with it, but Louie was telling the drivers not to pick up, to use his word, cripples. And then he's told you can't call them that, you have to call them handicapped persons. And he says, okay, you can't pick up handicapped people. And obviously that's terrible. His reasoning is that in the time it takes you to help a handicapped person in and out of a cab, you could have multiple passengers, which is not a nice way of thinking. But the laugh came when he said, cabs are only for people who can walk, which is obviously a ridiculous statement, and I like the fact that the humour came from making fun of him and how ridiculous he was being. I wasn't sure where they were going with that comedy, but it went, in my opinion, in the right direction. The boxing aspect then comes into it because Tony is wanting to, well, take part in boxing. He's fighting against this champion. I'll talk more about that character in a moment, or when we get there chronologically as well. And Elaine decides to go behind one of the boxers who is currently jumping rope and start saying one of the rhymes that schoolgirls say. And it was just absolutely adorable, and it took me straight back to my childhood, and I loved it. And they presented Tony with this robe, this bright red robe. I love the design of it. It has his name on the back. It looks brilliant. And what I will say is my only, not really criticism as such, but I think it's too early in the season for this episode. Because there is a moment in the fight where he wins. He wins this boxing match and he jumps. He jumps very high. He jumps for joy. And I feel like I, as a viewer, was supposed to feel proud of that moment, and I'm supposed to feel happy for him. And I wasn't unhappy for him, but I haven't built up an emotional connection with the character yet, really with any of the characters. And I didn't really feel anything. Whereas if this episode was later in the season and I'd had time to build a connection with Tony, I probably would have felt really happy for him. Great to see a character we've grown to know and love succeeding with whatever his dreams are. But because it's very early days and the previous episode didn't really focus on Tony, I don't really have that connection with the character. So it's not really a bad thing about the episode, but the placement within the season. But nevertheless, obviously, it was a happy atmosphere when he won. He came skipping into the garage. Everybody was happy for him, except Louie. Louie decided to bet against him losing, and it was unclear at that point where things were going. And we'll find out in a moment what happens with the upcoming boxing match. But before that, we get this fabulous scene with Danny DeVito. I have to say, for me, the comedy in this episode mostly came from Danny DeVito, which is not a surprise. And he is alone in the garage. He realises he's alone there. Also, I apologise if I go back and forth between saying garage and garage. That's not my intention. Sometimes I will say it one way and the other. I apologise. I'll try to be consistent. And he's alone. And he decides to burst out into song using the little tannoy microphone as a microphone. And it's It's a brilliant performance. It lasts probably less than a minute, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Very entertaining. Nice to see that different side to Louie, which I rather liked. And then we're about to have the fight. And unfortunately, we find out something that I think was a bit of a shocking twist, and also unfortunate for Tony, because Tony's opponent at the beginning is actually a boxer, a real-life boxer called Carlos Palomino. I know absolutely nothing about him. Needless to say, I don't care for boxing, so I wasn't aware of him. But he was, according to Wikipedia, a Mexican former professional boxer. And I had a look at the dates. And apparently, he was the All-US Army champion in 1971 and 1972. So clearly, he's been a professional boxer for a very long time, particularly in the beginning of the 70s. And Taxi, of course, was released in the kind of later 70s. So for them to have some kind of named personality early on in the show is quite promising. I have no idea how successful Carlos Palomino was at this point, but they absolutely could have just got any boxer, and it would, or like any actor to play a boxer, and the episode would have worked just as well. But the fact that they went that extra mile to get somebody who was already quite successful, I think is very promising for the rest of the show, and I was quite impressed by that. And unfortunately, we find out that he basically let Tony win. Because of money, people were not really finding anybody to beat him, so people weren't bothering to put that much money into watching it, because what's the point if this person's always going to win? It's really predictable, and obviously the thrill of sports is, well, hoping your favourite team wins, but also the excitement of the unpredictable. I say that as somebody who doesn't follow sports, so I'm just assuming that that's the case. But certainly we have a reason for why he let Tony do as well as he did. And Tony is obviously hurt by this, and it is a bit awkward because that now means he might not actually be skillful enough to then go and compete in this next boxing match. But to his credit, maybe, he decides to go ahead with it. And then we cut to the next scene and he's holding an ice pack to his head, and clearly it didn't go well for anybody except Louie, who won his bet and got his money. But it was lovely to see everybody still surrounding him and supporting him. And the fact that Louie had even bothered to go there anyway kind of showed that in his own way he was showing support, even though he was betting against him. And Tony didn't give up either. And he said he wasn't going to. So I thought that was really sweet. It's a really good episode. Yes, I think it would be more meaningful if it aired later in the season. But aside from that, I have no real complaints. I thought One Punch Banta was very well done, very entertaining, very funny in a lot of ways. The laughs for me came from characters I didn't expect to make me laugh most of the time. And also Louie, because Danny DeVito is amazing. And I don't care for boxing, and I really enjoyed this. So I'm taking that as a win. Second episode of Taxi, really, really well done. Looking forward to watching the next one.